Saturn is often called the crown jewel of our solar system, a golden masterpiece floating in the dark, but that beauty is a mask for something far more sinister. We've spent centuries staring at those rings from a distance, never realizing that were actually looking at the scene of a cosmic crime. There is a destructive, invisible force at play out there, a power so immense it can literally tear worlds apart, and we didn't truly understand it until we sent a lonely explorer named Cassini on a one-way mission into the abyss. What that probe found doesn't just change the way we look at Saturn. It changes the way we understand life, death, and the fragile nature of everything we see in the night sky. The most heartbreaking truth is that the rings we love are dying. On the timeline of the universe, they are barely a blink of an eye. They only showed up about 100 million years ago, and they're already starting to vanish. Imagine this. Once upon a time, Saturn had an extra moon. It was a small, brilliant sphere of solid ice orbiting peacefully for eons. But Saturn's gravity is a hungry beast. Inch by inch, year by year, it dragged that moon closer until it crossed the Roche limit, an invisible line of no return. This is where the gravity of the planet becomes stronger than the gravity holding the moon together. It was a literal tug of war for existence, and the moon lost. Saturn didn't just pull it in, it reached out and shredded it. It turned a solid world into 17,000 trillion tons of frozen shrapnel. To get those iconic rings, Saturn had to murder a moon and wear its remains like a trophy. Everything we see now, from microscopic dust to boulders the size of houses, is just the pulverized debris of that lost world, flattened into a disk by the sheer speed of Saturn's rotation. It took only a few days for this field of moon corpse to settle into the patterns we see today, shaped by shepherd moons that act like cosmic carvers, cutting paths through the ice. The scale is impossible to wrap your head around. These rings span almost the entire distance between the Earth and our moon, yet they are thinner than a 3-story apartment building. If you flew toward them edge on, they would simply disappear. It's a ghost of a structure, held together by a fragile balance of power that is already failing. We know all of this because of Cassini. For 13 years, this machine was our eyes and ears, flying through the gaps in the rings and witnessing the 3-dimensional chaos up close. Mountain ranges of ice 200 meters tall, and waves of debris tall enough to swallow a skyscraper. But the more we looked, the more we realized we arrived just in time to say goodbye. The same gravity that created the rings is now swallowing them. The planet is literally eating its own crown, raining ice down into its atmosphere while the shepherd moons vacuum up the rest like cosmic Roombas. One day, the sky over Saturn will be empty again. But as Cassini pushed deeper, it found something that defied every law of nature we thought we knew. While the main rings were disappearing, it found a massive, ghostly blue halo stretching out into the dark. This wasn't made of dead moon shrapnel. It was being created by something alive, or at least something that felt like it was breathing. It led us to Enceladus, a tiny ball of ice that should have been a frozen tomb, but when Cassini got close, the radio waves went haywire. It wasn't just a rock, it was a world under pressure. As the probe turned its cameras toward the South Pole, it saw something that sent chills through every scientist at NASA. Massive geysers of water vapor exploding into the vacuum of space. Saturn wasn't just a graveyard for moons, it was a host to a moon that was actively screaming light and water into the void. This discovery blew the doors off our understanding of the solar system, but it only led us deeper into the darkness of the planet itself. And when you look past the rings and dive toward the actual surface, you realize there is no ground to stand on. It's a shifting, violent nightmare of gas and pressure. Right at the North Pole, there is a storm shaped into a nearly perfect hexagon, a geometric anomaly wider than the entire Earth. It shouldn't exist. Nature doesn't like straight lines, yet there it is, spinning with winds that reach 1,800 kilometers per hour. We've tried to recreate this in labs, and we've failed every single time. It's as if something massive and ancient is rotating deep within the bowels of the planet, driving this geometric monster from the inside out. The pressure down there is so intense it turns hydrogen gas into a liquid metal ocean, and at the very center, a core burning at 11,000 degrees Celsius, twice as hot as the surface of the sun. We are talking about a world so light it could float in a bathtub, yet so powerful it creates a storm system that changes color with the seasons, shifting from a cold winter blue to a summer gold. We watched this shift happen through Cassini's eyes until 2017, the year we ran out of time. With the fuel gauges hitting empty, NASA had to make a choice: let the probe drift into the dark forever, or give it a hero's death. They chose the grand finale. They aimed Cassini directly at the heart of the giant, sending it on a suicide dive between the rings and the clouds. As it plummeted, the winds began to tear at its metal skin, the thrusters fought a losing battle, and for one final agonizing moment, it sent back data from inside the atmosphere before the gravity of Saturn finally crushed it out of existence. We are still mourning that loss, digging through the mountains of data it sent back in its final seconds. But the deeper we look into those files, the more we realize that the most terrifying secret of the solar system wasn't the death of the probe. It was what Cassini saw hiding just beneath the clouds of the neighboring giant. Jupiter is the monster that guards our solar system, a gas giant so massive that it doesn't just orbit the sun, it practically commands the space around it. If Saturn is the crown jewel, Jupiter is the king, but it is a king with a dark, violent history. For decades, we looked at its great red spot and thought we were seeing a simple storm, but when we finally got close enough to listen to the sounds of its magnetic field, we realized we weren't just looking at weather. We were looking at a planetary heart that beats with the power of 1 billion nuclear bombs. This is a place where the atmosphere is so thick it acts like a solid wall, where the pressure can turn common gas into liquid diamonds, and where the radiation is so intense it would fry a human being in seconds. The first thing you have to understand about Jupiter is its sheer, terrifying scale. It's not just a planet, it's a failed star. If it had grown just a little bit larger during the birth of our solar system, it would have ignited, giving us 2 suns and likely making life on Earth impossible. Because of its massive size, its gravity is the ultimate cosmic vacuum cleaner. Every day, Jupiter is bombarded by asteroids and comets that would otherwise be heading straight for us. In 1994, the world watched in horror as the comet Shoemaker-Levy 9 was ripped apart by Jupiter's tidal forces and slammed into its atmosphere. Each fragment created an explosion larger than the entire Earth, leaving scars on the clouds that lasted for months. It was a brutal reminder that Jupiter is the only reason we are still here. It's our shield, but it's a shield that thrives on destruction. But the real mystery lies beneath those swirling bands of orange and white. We used to think Jupiter was just a big ball of gas, but the Juno mission revealed something far more unsettling. The surface we see is just a thin layer of ammonia clouds. Beneath that is a world of pure chaos. As you dive deeper, the heat rises to levels that would melt any metal known to man. The hydrogen, the very thing we breathe on Earth, is squeezed so hard that it transforms into metallic hydrogen. In this state, it acts like a liquid metal, conducting electricity and creating a magnetic field so massive that it stretches all the way to the orbit of Saturn. This field isn't just a shield, it's a weapon. It traps subatomic particles and accelerates them to nearly the speed of light, creating a permanent belt of radiation that glows with a ghostly, invisible light. Then, there are the moons. Jupiter has a family of over 90 followers, but 4 of them, the Galilean moons, are worlds of their own. There's Io, a yellow, sulfur-choked hellscape that is the most volcanic place in the solar system. It's caught in a gravitational tug-of-war between Jupiter and the other moons, which literally stretches and squeezes the rock until it melts. Then there's Europa, a pale, cracked marble of ice. Beneath that frozen crust lies a global ocean of liquid water, more water than all of Earth's oceans combined. It is the most likely place in our neighborhood to find alien life, hiding in the dark, warmed by the same violent gravity that keeps the planet's heart beating. The more we learn about Jupiter, the more we realize it isn't just a planet, it's a warning. It's a glimpse into the raw, unfiltered power of the universe. We've sent probes to its moons and dropped sensors into its clouds, but the deeper we go, the more the planet seems to push back. We found that the Great Red Spot, a storm that has raged for at least 300 years, is actually shrinking. It's as if the planet is shedding its old skin, preparing for a transition we don't yet understand. And while we were busy looking at the clouds, our instruments picked up a signal coming from deep within the moon Ganymede, a magnetic whisper that shouldn't exist for a moon of its size. It's a signal that suggests Ganymede isn't just a rock, but a world with its own internal engine, perhaps even its own secrets buried under miles of ice. As we stand on the edge of this discovery, looking back at the data from the probes we've sacrificed to the giant, a chilling realization is starting to set in among the team. We thought we were the ones exploring Jupiter, but the way the planet's radiation interacts with our technology, and the way the storms seem to react to our presence, makes it feel like the planet has been watching us back. And just as we began to decode the strange magnetic pulses from Ganymede, the Juno probe sent back one final distorted image from a region of the planet we call the Great Blue Spot, an area of intense magnetism that shouldn't be there. The image was grainy, filled with static from the radiation, but beneath the noise there was a shape that looked less like a storm and more like a structure. A structure that, if real, would mean everything we know about the gas giant is a lie. And the real reason our probes keep failing isn't the environment, it's because something down there is intentionally breaking them,